This is Federalist 39, Part 4. We're going to look at paragraph 8. Without inquiring into the accuracy of the distinction on which the objection is founded, it will be necessary to a just estimate of its force, first, to ascertain the real character of the government in question. Secondly, to inquire how far the convention were authorized to propose such a government. And thirdly, how far the duty they owed to their country could supply any defect of regular authority. So Federalist Paper 39 is going to talk about whether the new Constitution is a federal form of, is going to present you a federal system, or whether it's going to present you a republican system. So we've talked about that so far. Now, in the last part, in the last paragraph, he said that our critics have been saying that the system you have given with this new Constitution is not a federal one. It is a national one. You're going to consolidate power. And starting with this paragraph, he's going to answer those people. And also, those critics said that, who gave you the authority to write this new Constitution? So he's going to be answering that too. The next paragraph. First, in order to ascertain the real character of the government, it may be considered in relation to the foundation on which it is to be established, to the sources from which its ordinary powers are to be drawn, to the operation of those powers, to the extent of them, and to the authority by which future changes in the government are to be introduced. On examining the first relation, it appears on one hand that the Constitution is to be founded on the assent and ratification of the people of America, given by deputies elected for the special purpose, but on the other, that this assent and ratification is to be given by the people, not as individuals composing one entire nation, but as composing the distinct and independent states to which they respectively belong. It is to be the assent and ratification of the several states derived from the supreme authority in each state, the authority of the people themselves. The act, therefore, establishing the Constitution will not be national, but a federal act. See, we are getting this Constitution ratified in a federal way. Because remember, we are sending it to different states, and different states, the people in different states will have special ratifying conventions, and only the people in those states can send delegates to those ratifying conventions. So states are acting separately on their own to ratify this Constitution. We need 9 of these states to do that. So he says, how can you say this is concentration of power and consolidation of power? This is a federal form that we have asked you to follow. And since we've already talked about this is the beauty of this system. They wrote the Constitution and they didn't send it back to the state legislatures to ratify. They said, no, the only way that this is going to tell people that the Constitution is their Constitution is if they send delegates to special conventions, special ratifying conventions, and those conventions ratify this Constitution, not the legislatures that are already sitting and serving the people. So this makes the way the American Constitution was ratified very special. The next paragraph, that it will be a federal and not a national act, as these terms are understood by the objectors. The act of the people as forming so many independent states, not as forming one aggregate nation, is obvious from this single consideration, that it is to result neither from the decision of a majority of the people of the Union, nor from that of a majority of the states. It must result from the unanimous assent of several states that are parties to it, differing no otherwise from their ordinary assent than in its being expressed, not by the legislative authority, but by that of the people themselves, where the people regarded in this transition as forming one nation, the will of the majority of the whole people of the United States would bind the minority in the same manner as the majority in each state must bind the minority. And the will of the majority must be determined either by a comparison of the individual votes or by considering the will of the majority of the states as evidence of the will of the majority of the people of the United States. Neither of these rules has been adopted. Each state, in ratifying the Constitution, is considered as a sovereign body independent of all others, and only to be bound by its own voluntary act. In this relation, then the new Constitution will, if established, be a federal and not a national Constitution. Again, this Constitution is a federal one. Don't say it's a national one. It's a consolidated and concentrated one. Because if we wanted it that way, we might have just put it up to a majority vote of all the people of the United States. What we did is we said we were going to send it to different states, and different states will have a special ratifying convention, and the people in those states only, not the people of other states, will send delegates to see if they want the Constitution or not. So we've made it federal in this form. And that's one of the beauties of it. Okay, I'll continue with the next paragraph. The next relation is to the sources from which the ordinary powers of government are to be derived. The House of Representatives will derive its powers from the people of America, and the people will be represented in the same proportion and on the same principle as they are in the legislature of a particular state. So far, the government is national, not federal. The Senate, on the other hand, will derive its powers from the states as political and co-equal societies, and these will be represented on the principle of equality in the Senate, as they now are in the existing Congress. So far, the government is federal, not national. Again, he says the members of the House of Representatives are elected directly by the people. But the members of the Senate, because each state, regardless of how big or small it is, how populous or how not populous it is, it gets 2 senators. And the state legislatures elect those senators. So we've made it federal in this form. The executive power will be derived from a very compound source. Well, the president will be chosen by the Electoral College, right? That's why he says it's going to be a compound source. The immediate election of the president is to be made by the states in their political characters. The votes allotted to them are in a compound ratio, which considers them partly as distinct and co-equal societies, partly as unequal members of the same society. The eventual election, again, is to be made by that branch of the legislature which consists of the national representatives. But in this particular act, they are to be thrown into the form of individual delegations from so many distinct and co-equal bodies politic. So the president is chosen by the Electoral College. Every state gets a certain number of electoral votes. Part of it is representative of the nation, because part of that number comes from the number of representatives they get, and that's based on population. And part of that number for electoral votes comes from the 2 members that they each get for the Senate. So he says, even in that, we have made it almost a federal system. It's only like if there's a tie that it goes to the House of Representatives, and even there, they don't vote by the number of representatives that are present. They vote as delegates from each state having 1 vote. So he says, we've made sure that this is a compound source to make it both federal and national. From this aspect of the government, it appears to be of a mixed character, presenting at least as many federal as national features. So it's a mixed system. We have made sure that states have a lot of authority every way you look at it. So this is a federal system. So he continues to talk about all the things that makes this Constitution both a Constitution that gives you a Republican form of government and a Constitution that's federal for the most part.